Thank you, Jerry. I think this is a wise move on the part of Drew making this motion to call for some control of the town ordinance, a road ordinance with bonding. Also, I'd like to speak briefly about the pipeline, the proposed pipeline. As everyone knows or should know, these pipelines do leak and they do explode. In fact, there have been 200 pipeline accidents that have been reported since the year 2000. That's over 16 incidents per year. Rebecca Roter and Frank Finan have agreed to come up here, and they are eyewitness experts on gas industry build-out, because Rebecca lives in, basically they've drilled so many wells around her that she's living in a gas field at this point. There's approximately 21 wells that have been drilled and fracked within a mile and a half of her, and some of them as close as, what, 3,000 feet? And they intend to drill 4 more next spring, and again, somewhere like 3,000 feet from her house. So she notices that when they're drilling and fracking, she's experiencing health problems. Also, Frank, somewhere along the line, realized that there are a good bit of gas emissions coming from these compressor stations and other facilities connected with wells, the fracking, the produced water tanks. So he went out and bought a very expensive video camera and that detects these gas emissions, and he has, as a result of that, going to Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, and maybe he's filmed some here, videoed some here in this state. He's got some spectacular videos on those gas emissions, and in fact, in some cases, the gas emissions look like flares. They're coming up with such force. So I hope you will have time to recognize him and Rebecca as well. And as you recall, gas pipelines do explode, and sometimes people lose their homes. Kathy and John Sayers in Morgan County, Ohio, lost their home. This industry is toxic. If we were to start transitioning on a more aggressive basis to solar and wind, we wouldn't have any problems with hydrofracking, right? And we wouldn't have any problems with fracking. Now, Wayne and Angel Smith in Bedford County, Pennsylvania, lost a 600-pound steer, 3 calves, 3 dogs, 13 chickens, and 4 cats because a compressor station was close to their house, plus a storage field. There are many more examples of people who have incurred serious health problems as a result of compressor stations or wells being close to their house. So I'd like you to consider these problems and move toward establishing a moratorium in the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Public concern? So you're from Plymouth?
No.
Any Plymouth folks? Or taxpayers? Okay.
My name is Frank Finan, with Finan and responsible. I'm from Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania. I was invited up here and talk for about 5 minutes about what's going on down here. It's not really possible, so I brought my projector and laptop and show some pictures. But I will tell you that when the pipeline comes through, that's going to open the door for fracking. When fracking happens, every aspect of your life will change. Your churches will be divided. Is it a gift from God, or is it based worship? There's going to be arguments between husband and wife. You're going to get a lot of land. You're going to have relatives come out of the woodwork. Like I say, I'm boring you already. So maybe I should just give 9 minutes to Rebecca and have to show my videos and pictures the afternoon if they want to stay together.
Can you show them now while he's speaking? Or while she's speaking?
Within your 5 minutes, sure.
Go ahead, or set it up.
Why don't you set it up?
Maybe you could count 2 minutes and allow him 3 more minutes later?
I'll tell you what I will take a couple of minutes to show you what I shot in Texas last weekend. Takes a little time to move up here. I got to bring my cable that goes from my recorder to my laptop that here's up here. And you have to swap on, just put it up. Is that okay?
Thank you very much for hearing me, and I, as a Pennsylvania resident, am very happy to see that New York State is having discussion about the impacts and how to manage things that might happen. Can you hear me behind me? Yeah, I don't speak, I'm sorry. Yeah. I
When we
find
got
it,
folks talking, they have the floor, thanks.
I find it heartening that you are being responsible to your constituents and having a conversation. In Pennsylvania, I don't think we really had this chance. We never got to have a discussion publicly whether we were pro or anti. And I'm not here to discuss whether I'm pro or anti or you are. That's not what this is about. This is about me dealing with the impacts. And Peter asked me to come speak about pipelines because I do live in Brooklyn Township on Turnpike Road, less than a mile from the Williams Central Station, which is the slated beginning of the Constitution Pipeline. And just in listening to you talk about the MP visit, you talked about a southern connector, perhaps that's the Constitution Pipeline.
I believe it's...
Because you mentioned it goes from the Dominion to the Millennium.
Correct.
And they had said there was a gap, and they said there was another pipeline.
No, there's a gap that they not accounted for in their preliminary discussion, that apparently they don't have rights of way for yet.
Okay, so, I don't know if you noticed, but is it open access? Because there are so many things to learn about pipelines, and whether they're state regulated or FERC regulated. I know on my hill, I have pipelines going in all over that are state regulated, and I live in a class 1 area with its FERC. If it's state regulated, those pipelines, there's no regulations, there's no routine inspection, there's no safety plan for us. We learned that with the Lathrop compressor explosion in Springville, which is a Williams station. But with a transmission line like Constitution, which is for class 1, they use the thinnest pipe possible. They call it a safety coefficient. And if you live in a class 1 area, which is rural, less than 10 inhabited homes per square mile, and it's an HCA, high consequence area, and that relates to the diameter of the pipeline, the pressure of the gas, and the thickness of the steel. If you die in a pipeline explosion, the operator is not required to report your fatality as being pipeline related. So I think what I'm saying is I'm learning that as a rural resident in a gas field, it's a mind bender. But if you Google FERC, HCA, class 1, you'll find that. I'm not making this up.
No, I know.
And that's the new normal. I'm glad you laughed because it sounds crazy, but it's real.
I know it's real.
I've
looked at the PSC guideline.
You were talking about, it's nice to hear you talking about having a roadship ordinances, because I've heard township supervisors in my county, we have 10-ton limits on our roads. There are wide loads going up my hill every day. There's nobody to enforce it. And if you ask the supervisors, they can't enforce it. They just can't. So it happens. And I have a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit on my dirt road. I have traffic going up and down my road for the Williams Central compressor being constructed. They're doing more than 25 miles per hour, but there's 2 state troopers from my county. There's no way of enforcing it. So I think what I'm saying is regulations can't fix a problem as it's happening. They're great to have, you need to have them, but they're not going to prevent problems from happening. You made the comment earlier, if it's not documented, it never happened. Well, that's happening in my state. I think it's great that SGICE is taking the Public Health Department, bringing them into this review process. We never got that humanity in my state. actually, I think it was 2 weeks ago, the head of the director of the Pennsylvania Department of Health, who was a doctor, was forced to resign and replaced with an MBA. So in Pennsylvania, there really has been a shift of power from the public government to the corporate sphere. And I feel as if my state body has been hijacked by corporate interests. And I would just warn you, look over the border and see what's happening in Pennsylvania. And I hope Act 13, which you might be aware of, doesn't happen here, because you will lose your right to have municipal sovereignty if something like Act 13 is passed in New York State. And I just read today on the internet that there is something in the New York State Legislature. It's a bill, A05102, called the Natural Gas Infrastructure Act.
Say that again, please.
A05102, Natural Gas Infrastructure Act. And this is a bill, an open legislation, that is proposing to take taxpayer money to subsidize the cost of building pipelines and compressors, infrastructure needed to move gas to market. So, with the Constitution pipeline, I also know that is, as you probably know, slated to run from my hill in Susquehanna County through the I-88 corridor up to ultimately Boston, the Northeast market. There really doesn't seem to be a need for this pipeline to move gas from under my feet to the East Coast, because you have the Millennium and the Bluestone. They already do that. So there's some question as to why the industry wants this pipeline through the heart of Marcellus in New York State. And I think that your DEC recognizes the intent. Pipelines will mean fracking, because DEC has said that they want to have the infrastructure in place before, slick water hydraulic fracturing occurs in your state. So once the pipeline is through, you're going to have induced build-out. You're going to have the infrastructure in, you're going to have, it's going to be easy to have drilling and fracking build out. And because of that, DEC has told FERC that they have to do a cumulative impact of the Constitution pipeline and include drilling and fracking. And I think you need to be aware of that. Because once they're here, it'll be harder for you to control how things happen. And as a citizen, I do want to show you, I probably talked more than 5 minutes, but one last thing.
I've been asking questions.
One last thing. So right now, I usually have a speech I could hand it to, but I couldn't today because there's a flare that's so loud I just couldn't think straight. It's about a mile from my house. It's extremely loud. It's when they just open up the well and light it and turn it off. But I do, back in August, when they were fracking 4 wells, 3,000 feet behind my house, there was a film of stuff in my pond. I have 68 acres, and I am leased. I am a leased landowner. And at the end of the day, I went down, and I saw that this film had gone towards the spillway, and it was particulate matter. It looked like sand. And my first thought was, oh wow, goldenrod doesn't do this. And then I realized, oh my God, this is probably silica. When they frack, they use silica. And silica is very toxic. You breathe it, you get silicosis. It's not healthy for people to breathe. And so there was this stuff in my pond. I scooped it up, and I put it into a glass jar, and I inverted it. And I let it sit, and it did not settle out overnight. And I know from other neighbors who've had their drinking water impacted by simple installation of pipeline also. The bentonite drill mud has silica, and the silica doesn't settle out. So 24 hours later, it was still suspended. So I poured it into this dish, and I let it evaporate, and this is what I was left with. And if you look at it, it looks like cement. You can pass it. If you want to look. So this was on my pond. And when this happened, there's nobody I can call. I can't call my DEP, I can't call my Department of Health. There's nobody. Who do you call when you have silica in your pond? So just be aware. Okay. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
you're ready for your 3 minutes? You're up and
Yeah.
You're up and running?
This is about 50 seconds to get past this. One to the other. This is a condensate tank. You can't see with your eyes. Look at that, you see nothing but clean air, or no air at all.
Does that have anything to do with what you've got up there right now?
I have, no, that's just miscellaneous snapshots I took. I have videos.
And what is this specifically supposed to be?
That shows emissions coming from a condensate tank.
You want to go on specific to name? What kind?
Video, listen to the camera. Yeah, I don't want to tell you.
And was it burning diesel fuel? Was it-
No, that's flow back. That comes out of the gas, out of the ground, they put it into the condensate tank, they pour it with water or brine. And that's what is good for the plants.
And so this, okay, can you be more specific?
Okay.
It dropped out, it dropped out. Get it going again for me, please.
I suppose is the camera picking up stuff that the naked eye can't see?
Right.
Yeah. And so I wanted to get more specific on how it's doing it, what it's doing.
It's a very complicated camera.
Well, is it in IR, infrared, or is this ultraviolet? What is,
Hey,
how is
folks,
it doing it?
sorry.
Sorry.
You know, hey. This gentleman has the floor, so
Okay, it's an optical gas imaging camera. When I bought this, I was the only civilian to get one outside the
It's,
industry.
what's it called again?
FLIR, F-L-I-R, but it's pronounced FLIR.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But it's not to be confused with the thermal cameras.
No, I know that, it's, for pilots use, in helicopters.
That's still heat sensing. This will do heat sensing, but it's the only camera made that will actually see.
It's an IR group family, is what
It's
I'm
an IR
saying.
family, but it will do more than just what IR does.
Right.
If I took a bit wider and blew it out, you would see the.
what part of being quiet when somebody else has the floor don't we understand?
Yeah, just give them this. Okay.
Everybody will be afforded the same opportunity to speak up here
And I appreciate you
if
going.
you want. And then this gentleman will be conscious of your
I appreciate you going over the I could send you a link to the specs on the camera.
No, that's okay. I mean, I'm familiar with it.
Okay. And it wasn't if I bought this, that DEP bought one. And it was after this, that DEP to have one, so I bought one.
So this is this emission that you're photographing is from a condensate tank
Yes.
from blowback.
In Texas, they call it condensate tanks, here they call it brine tanks. So when the gas is unrefined, they separate the fluids out, but the fluids are contaminated with VOCs, VTECs, and I don't want to get into a list of things, because you're going to point out, oh, it's not this, not that, I went into the court. But I will give you a list of what the camera does see. But I'm not a scientist, I'm a retired woodworker. And my retirement is not supposed to be this. But I suspect things are going wrong when the landing came around, and what they were telling me was not true.
Okay, you have some slides you want to show us?
Yeah.
Get through that?
Now, what I have here, most of my FLIR footage is either on this recorder or on the internet. I have no internet service here. Sometimes I'm scatterbrained. But I can show you my snapshots of what you're going to get when they come. And if you see any pictures you have to explain or elaborate on, that would be good. Oh, did I scrap that on me already? There was a time, a couple of years ago, when you can drive onto a well site and just take pictures. Trespass was not a big issue back then. It is now. Now you can't look at one without them coming out yet. These are just a mess of chemicals and who knows what on the ground. They drill 24/7. That's just a drill rig. That's nice. Whoever comes out of the ground, they dump in the pits. You got a house right in the background there. That was endemic. This is up the road from me. I went on the site to see what they were cleaning up. They had the Minutemen there, emergency cleanup. Asked them what they were doing. They were cleaning up rain, water, rain, they were cleaning it up. I can't say they're lying, but it's not true. Building a compressor station up the road from me. They're back. The war's not over. They bought us. That's another joint rig up the road from me. This shows you how close they get. I have similar pictures in Texas. This will be a motel instead of a barn. Would it be $1 million house instead of a barn? Oh boy, I just hit something bad here. That's a flare. More flares. There's 5 of them there. They stink, and the ground smokes when they're doing this. The steam of the ground is hot. That's all their water you're never going to see again. It's all fresh water that's going to go down the hole with chemicals. This is in Tioga County. They frack and the gas comes through the ground. I have clear footage of this too. You see the water, you can see the bubbles popping and the gas coming out. What's that one at? Oh, I got all artsy. That's not photoshopped. Of course, I was kind of confused. Like I say, I'm not organized. I have lots of different albums with different pictures, and they're not in any kind of order. But I'm taking a lot of, I appreciate you giving me this much time, but I'll be willing to stay here as long as anybody wants. If they want to see more, or if you want to throw me out, I understand that too. I drove an hour and a half to get here.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
The FLIR is all on the internet.
Any other public comments?
Well, you know,
Date of our next meeting? Well,
this is all FLIR. This I shot in color. It shows the infrared we're talking about. This shows the heat as well as the gases.
that evening,
But if you drove by this site, you would see nothing at all coming out. I showed this to the workers there. I was outside in the road field, and they would see what I was doing.
next meeting will be 12/10.
Sure.
Oh, the 10th. Steve, right? 12, start.
That's what confused.
So when I talked to the people there, they said something's wrong. I said, no, this is all the time. They didn't understand that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
We'll review the bills now, and like I said earlier, we need to go into executive session for that, for a couple items. We will come out of executive session, back in public session, and then we will adjourn. As we're doing the bills, I want to remind everybody, it's still a meeting and we need to communicate. So if you want to side discussion, please take them outside.
Very nice. Do you want help? You're going to go into executive session.
Where?
Oh, my goodness. Boy, my father always wanted to. They had he probably bought it.
Keep on running, Ken. I will, let one of those Republicans left. They call Obama on the back of me. Like a white with 4 legs. Out run a skunk.
You know, it's amazing that all these co-gas people here are not elected to speak. It's pretty amazing. You just let these guys speak. That's amazing.
Well, they're gonna flip it on their video.
Oh,
Glad to see you here.
Make up this
Glad to see you here because I didn't have much battery.
Oh, okay.
you ran out of batteries.
No, I was just, I didn't run out.
Okay, very good.
I was able to stop and just,
Yeah.